one thing that won't ever stop is time will keep ticking. And regardless of how bad your injury is or situation is, you'll recover and you'll move on.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We are back this week with an epic episode for you. We apologize we missed last week's episode. Both Dan's family and myself were at home sick with COVID, but we are back and better than ever. This week is a bit different. We typically try and stay away from too many combat stories and focus on the transition that each veteran goes through. However, we had so many questions when we knew we would be featuring Ryan Hendrickson, a former Army Green Beret and author of Tip of the Spear. Ryan shares some pretty insane moments he faced during his deployments, including multiple near-death experiences. This episode is full of courageous moments and lessons we can all learn from. Make sure and grab yourself a copy today of Tip of the Spear to read about the full details and more on some of the topics we will cover in this week's episode. And again, thanks for always for supporting our show. Real stories, real heroes, for a real cause. This is Never Left Behind, the podcast. Hey, Ryan, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you guys?
We're doing awesome. Good. It's finally great to have you on the show. I know the past few months we've been kind of jumping through hoops, trying to figure out with holidays and family stuff and you moving into a new home and trying to get internet set up. We've been kind of jumping through hoops to get you on, and we're just really appreciative to have you on tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys being flexible because we've been trying to make this happen for a while now. So
yeah, well, I'm excited because, just a really quick intro for anybody who doesn't know Ryan Hendrickson. He wrote a book titled Tip of the Spear, and it's kind of his story, especially like from childhood all the way through military service from when you finished writing it. But are you still serving today as well? Like you're still continuing to serve, or did you just recently get out?
So I retired from the Army January 2020, wow. And then I started contracting. Yeah, right off the bat. So since January 2020 when I retired till now, I spent 14 months in Afghanistan as a contractor. Jeez. So, and I'm just like, man, this is I don't really know if I retired or what I did. So
just transition to something else.
Slowing down quite a bit now.
Yeah,
because of.
Yeah, which I do want to ask you about that, especially somebody who's had service that spanned pre 9/11 all the way through, really to the events that have happened in the last couple weeks and months. So it'll be interesting to dive into that.
Yeah, I want to get started because we have a lot to get into. But what first inspired you to want to write the book? Like, where did all that come from?
So it actually didn't start off as a book. I had been doing some writing, just journaling and whatnot like that. Because we had, I did 3 back-to-backs to Afghanistan in a row, and then before that it was 3 more trips, but a little bit more spread out. But there just wasn't a lot of time to really work on yourself. And our chaplain had asked me, he's like, have you ever thought about like writing things down and just kind of getting it off, your chest, putting it from, your chest or your conscience and put it on paper. Because one of the things is you could go and you can get some beers with some buddies at a bar and you guys can vent and talk about everything that's going on with you. And then when you leave and you go, to your home and your family, and they leave, they go to their home and their family, it's all just dead air. Nothing was really resolved. Yeah, you talked about it and all right, great. But there's nothing, substantial to it. It's just dead air. And so he's like, well, have you ever thought about writing? And, no, obviously I hadn't thought about writing. I'm just I'm an 18 Charlie knuckle dragger. So we got going through the 2017 trip. So I went in 16 and then 17, and then 18. But that 2017 trip, I just yeah, I was just at a certain point that I just needed to kind of like vent maybe. And so I just started typing and typing and typing. And when I had free time, things would pop in my head and I'd continue to type. And I mean, there was times that, I'd wake up at 3:00 in the morning and think about something and then open up my keyboard or the laptop real quick and type it out. And then, so slowly but surely, here's, one page turns to 10 to 20 to 50 to hundreds. And now I'm looking at like 600 pages of just stuff. And so I go back through and I start organizing it a little bit, kind of the way it reads right now in the book. And so now I have this kind of, finished product up to that point in my life. And so that was, it was a lot of work. It was months. And so I got to thinking like, well, I wonder what people would think about this. And so I had a couple, close buddies read it, because you want the most brutally honest answer in the world, you ask another team guy, and you're whether you want to know it or not, you're going to get an answer. And they, buddies came back, and it was pretty overwhelming. Like, dude, this is, you're talking the same, thing or issues or thoughts or whatnot that I like. People need to read this. And so I didn't really pay much attention to that. Got my family involved, and they read it, and it's like, yeah, people should read this, this book. It's, it speaks to, it speaks to you as far as victimization and falling in the entitlement pitfalls and stuff like that. And so it's like, all right, well, look, how do I write a book? How do I do this? And so I got in contact with a guy through some different channels, and his name's Mike Yorkie, and he's an editor. And he's like, yeah, let me read what you got, and when I have time, I'll read it and I'll let you know. And then he contacts me back like 2 days later, and he's like, this has to be a book. Like, people need to read this. And so that's pretty much, him and I went through the editing process, word by word, and then I submitted it to the DoD for review. And next thing you know, I'm I'm in Afghanistan, and the book releases while I'm in Afghanistan. And
Man.
And then lo and behold, I'm I'm an author, I guess. I don't know. So
it's kind of crazy because, like, obviously Dan and I and another member, Tom, who's part of our company, just did our first book. And yeah, man, I don't think anybody prepared us to understand what it's like to write a book, let alone put photos in that book as well to try and match a lot of the wording. And there's a lot of hard work. Yeah. So I can imagine, we've got 3 of us, and I can imagine just having, you and an editor to go through and try and pick out all those different notes with all those different words, trying to make sense of what order it goes in. And then I imagine you guys went through like 4 or 5 kind of final products before it actually landed as the book Tip of the Spear as it is today.
Oh yeah. It was painstaking sometimes, because his style of writing and mine, there would be a certain sentence that it's like, I'm not changing this. This is what it is. And he's like, it doesn't make sense. I don't care. I'm not changing it. And so there was a lot of that. That happened. But he is, Mike Yorkie is probably the most talented guy I've ever met when it comes to when it just comes to editing and whatnot. He's a great human being, Christian. And he just, and him and I over a year just went back and forth until it was a completed process and ready to be submitted to the DoD. So
wow. Did you kind of have a timeline of when you wanted to release it by, or was it just once it's done and I can release it whenever?
What's that?
Did you guys kind of have like a certain timeline that you wanted to release the book by, or was it something that you guys just kind of let work out all the kinks, and when the book is finished and it's done, we'll just release it then?
So yeah, we had many of release dates in mind, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, Hachette Book Group, who's one of the, I think they're like the top 3 in the U.S., top 5 in the world, something like that. But now all of a sudden they're playing damage control because they don't know like what this pandemic is going to do for their sales and all this other stuff. And so we were already under contract. So, obviously they honored the contract and whatnot. But when it came to promoting it and stuff like that, they couldn't spend the money on a small time author, when they had, they write books, they're getting books in, Trump and Trump Jr. and stuff like that. Like those guys, that's who they need to focus their resources to. And I completely understood it. Like it makes sense to me because in the end, Ryan Hendrickson is not he's not going to knock it out of the park like a Donald Trump book or something like that would. So
well, I think they should. And I think you should. And I think a lot of people should read this book because I agree with a lot of your teammates, especially I initially read it, is like, it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And I'm sure it has already it has with me, just listening to it. And I know that there's countless others that it's going to, and it has, and I'm sure, and it's hopefully we can have our small, tiny little part in helping, get more people to read it as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Everything. So I'll give you an example. So this guy from New Zealand contacted me. He read the book and he contacted me. And he said, "Hey, I do a podcast and I would love to have you on it." And I was like, "Okay, sure." So, we figured out a time and whatnot like that. And just, he just has just a little following and whatnot. But we had a blast. It was so much fun. It was just like you were just talking to a friend for an hour. Well, I get contacted last week from a law enforcement official in Canada, and he is a law enforcement official in New Zealand. So I get contacted by this law enforcement official, and she said, "Hey, we're having a big law enforcement get together, mental health law enforcement seminar in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we want you to come and speak." And I was like, I've never public spoke before. And so through a lot of convincing through them, this podcast that I had with Bobby in New Zealand, now I'm gonna go speak to like 300 law enforcement officials and try not to sound like an idiot. So, but yeah, so
that's
no,
crazy.
I don't.
Awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's cool the doors that it opens up.
Yeah.
When people hear your story, and sometimes it can be something that's just fun, kind of having a podcast like we're doing right now. And then other times you just never know where it's going to go down the channels, and people are going to hear your story. They're going to want to reach out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's why every opportunity, AT&T isn't really helping me out right now, but every opportunity I get, and if there's time, I jump on because it just, and it's fun, you make friends and you get to sit here and just, kind of fellowship a little bit. And so it's fun for me. At least I think so. But.
Yeah. Well, hopefully tonight, with our episode, you're not going to be repeating yourself too much. I know we're going to cover a lot of topics that are in the book that I'm sure you've had many, many times to talk about, but we try and keep it fresh as much as possible with each guest. So again, just appreciate you even wanting to come on another podcast and share your story.
No, this is awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
I think it's crazy because first of all, the way you open the book is great. Like with the first chapter of like putting you in the place of the kind of pinnacle moment that was the transition in your military career. But when you progress through the book, it was crazy to me to just know how connected to the global war on terror you were really from the very beginning. Because you started your career in the Navy and you were on a ship that was in the Persian Gulf that initially responded to the USS Cole after it had its terrorist attack. Can you explain a little bit more about that context and like what that reaction was like, especially showing up there, at the site and helping out with the recovery?
Yeah. So we were on our way into the Persian Gulf to do our rotation in there, and the Cole sent out a distress call that they've been terrorist attack, whatnot like that. And us and the Donald Cook, we were the first two ships that were actually there. We were the closest. We were probably, I think, full steam ahead. We were probably 8 hours from the Gulf of Aden there. But so we get to Yemen and we start, sending over rescue and assistant teams and whatnot like that. And it was, at first we were trying to save the ship. So we were doing bucket brigades and submersible pumps and a lot of damage control where you're just trying to get that, you're trying to get that blast hole for the ship. You're trying to get that compartmentalized so you can save the rest of the ship. And it got a little hairy that first night because you weren't sure if the ship was going to sink or it was pretty crazy. But then and then as you're doing all that, you're also going through the body recovery. And so that was the first time when I ever really like, oh, there are people that really do want to kill you. You read about it, you see movies and stuff like that, but no one's ever, I've never witnessed carnage like that up close and personal before. And so, there's 17 dead sailors and it didn't matter. Didn't matter color, gender, nothing. There were females, males, and you got 17 dead sailors and it's as like, well, why? I don't understand, and that was one of the first salvos in the war on terror. And then obviously a couple months, about 11 months later, 9/11. So
yeah, for people who don't know like the context too. So the USS Cole there was a lot going on from Al Qaeda, but that was really the first major blow that a terrorist organization had against the U.S. And they had basically a small dinghy ship, right? Just strapped full of explosives and just pulled up beside the USS Cole.
So what they did, when you pull into these different ports, they'll send out trash barges so you can throw your trash on them and then they'll take the trash away. And usually they'll go through it because we're Americans. We throw away everything and, but yeah, they pulled up with a little just dinghy, like you were saying, it disguised as people that were going to be taking the trash. And they knew where at in the ship the chow hall was at because they detonated right next to the chow hall, which is during chow hours, which is what killed, which what created the body count that was there. So
jeez.
That was, it was a planned out operation, and Al Qaeda definitely masterminded that one. So
those people are smart. The more you find out about them and like their tactics and all that, and a lot of people will try and knock it, but they're pretty intelligent in their own.
Yeah, and there's more instances like this throughout the book where you could definitely see the cleverness of somebody who's trying to ultimately cause terror to others or to kill others.
Yeah.
And that's just one example that I think it was easy for the U.S. to let their guard down and for something like that to happen, but that was really kind of the heightening of our senses as a military. And then kind of when 9/11 happened, it was for many people around the world a shock. Obviously, it was a shock even to the people who were serving, but it wasn't as big of a shock as you would think if you were actively in and kind of plugged into the intelligence and what was going on in the background, because we knew Al Qaeda was going to attack the U.S. They were trying to actively attack the U.S.
Man.
So, obviously, the USS Cole incident, and then I know you continue to serve, but you had a crazy kind of stepping stone through the branches to finally land where you were and decide to be, in Special Forces and continue the rest of your service through Special Forces. But like, can you talk through what was your mindset, I guess, in transitioning through the branches and kind of just trying to find yourself, I guess, and exactly like how you were going to commit yourself to serving?
Yeah, no, I definitely had a crazy a crazy path to get to where I am right now. But so I joined the Navy basically because In the mid 90s, there wasn't really anything going on. Believe it or not, the Army didn't really even need anybody. And I think that was during the Clinton years where they were downsizing a lot. And but the Navy, you always need people because you know, it's a global force. I mean, you're either in the Persian Gulf or you're whatnot. So so first of all, like the recruiters, they'd come to high school and whatnot, and the Army recruiter, they're just like, we don't really need anyone. I mean, you can go infantry. It's about a 6-month wait right now or whatnot. The Air Force recruiter, they saw my test scores and they're like, no. And then the Marine, he was so scary and like yelling and, you know, he'd chew spit flying around everywhere. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy is an angry dude. I don't want to be in the Marines because he's super scary and he was buff and all that crap. And I was just like, man, I don't want any part of this. And then the Navy is the guy was just like, I don't know. I mean, you want to go see the world and go to exotic ports and see exotic women? I was like,
yeah.
You know, I mean, you want to be like Tom Cruise and F-14 Tomcat pilot or Charlie Sheen in a Navy SEAL. I mean, hell, do them both at the same time. Yeah. All right, cool, man. Sign here, stupid. So, so the Navy happened, and I got out after 4 years and tried to do the civilian thing and found out that I wasn't really good at it. But during that period of time as a civilian, 9/11 happened. And I honestly didn't think that it was going to turn into 21 years of what it did turn into, or 20 years, excuse me. And so I just figured we'd go and we'd kind of do we'd kind of do like the embassy bombings in Africa where we shoot a bunch of tomahawks at them and it's like, you guys are bad, and then go from there. Well, then Iraq kicks off. And I'm like, okay, so actually this is happening. Like we're at it now. And so I was married at the time, and the only branch of the service we could agree on was the Air Force, because she was like, oh yeah, the Air Force, you'll be safe there. Nothing ever happens to them. I was like, okay, so we agreed upon the Air Force. And she's like, and she didn't realize that, you know, well, she probably did, but neither one of us realized that in the Air Force, I was always gone because I loaded ammunition on aircraft. And in the wars of the 2000s, we dropped a lot of bombs. Therefore, I was always gone loading ammunition on the aircraft. So that whole, you know, I mean, we ended up getting a divorce and everything like that. And then I was going to it's like the S1 shop for the Air Force. I really can't remember what it's called. But I was going to the S1 shop and to update my files because I was getting a divorce and promotion packet and all this other stuff. And I saw this poster on the wall that had like a half man, or he had a guy in half. He was wearing or one side of the uniform was Army Class A's and the other side was Air Force Blues, and it was like go blue to green. And if you're in one of these AFSCs, it's an overmanned career field, and you can transfer directly over to the Army. And so I'm sitting there and it's like, well, I wanted to join the Army all the way back because she didn't want me joining the Army back in 2003 because she was like, yeah, the Army guys are the ones that die all the time, so I don't want you in the Army. Like, oh, okay, gotcha. So, but yeah, I went in and they're like, you're in this, you qualify for it. And so they sent me to talk to the career counselor, to the recruiter, and like 2 weeks later, I'm on my way to process into the Army over at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And then from there, I do this warrior transition course, which it was dumb. But then I go to infantry basic, and that started my whole process through, you know, Navy, Air Force, Army, and then the Q or selection Q course. And then next thing you know, I'm standing there with a Green Beret. It's like, I have no idea what's going on. But
That's crazy to kind of go from like 3 different branches until finally landing to where you originally were thinking you wanted to go, but there was just a long wait.
But you've always had that kind of thought of serving some sort of special operations, right? Like I think you talked about it in the book, but it's always been like kind of ingrained in the back of your brain. What was, I guess, what was your, because you could have chose a lot of different things. Like even in the Air Force, they have PJs, and
CCT,
yep, and things like that. Or you could have went to Ranger Regiment, or you could have went and, I think. Wait, I hope I don't get this wrong, but I believe you tried actually going through buds and everything as well, right?
Yeah. I didn't make it through buds, but that kind of got that got the wheels turning in my head. Pretty much that I was just kind of settling or existing in the military, but there was something bigger out there for me. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I actually, in the Air Force, I started off in the combat control pipeline, but then I was medically unqualified. After a couple months, they were like, you're just finding this out now? Like, you could have told me that before I wasted all this time. But those dudes, combat controllers and TAC Ps and whatnot, they've saved so many lives.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. So, but yeah, I had this, I just had this, I felt like there was something bigger for me and I couldn't figure out what it was. But switching over from the Army or the Air Force to the Army, I could have went Ranger Regiment, but I was 29 and I was an E5 and the guy was like, you don't want to come over here, man. No. This isn't a game you want to play at this age.
That's like when I joke about trying to go in at 31. You're going to be an old man.
Yeah. And he's just like, you don't want to come over here, man. This isn't the game you want to play. It's like, okay. But yeah, the Special Forces recruiter is like, yeah, this is what's going to happen. Because I had an 11 Bravo contract. But then in basic training, they came in and I switched over to 18 X-ray and that's what pretty much, paved the way for my becoming a Green Beret after being a bosun's mate in the Navy and an ammo troop in the Air Force. And then Army, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and step up a little bit more. And now I'm a Green Beret. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So it was cool.
It's interesting because, this is a 2-part question, but did you have to, on each branch, have to re-go through, well, obviously you had to go to boot camp in the Navy, but then in the Air Force, did you have to go to their basic training or boot camp? I can't remember what it's called. And then basic there. But then you also talk about in the book how, you came from the Navy and then came from the Air Force. So you didn't have any infantry tactic background or anything like that. Land navigation, and then you're trying to figure it out, and you went through the prep course that kind of helped you through that. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I didn't have to go through Air Force basic. I just had to do another military transition course, and then I went through a couple months of combat control training, and then I went and I was reclassed to ammo. But when I so in the Army, I guess. So yeah, I went through basic training and then AIT for infantry. But for me, it was just like infantry basic was just awesome. I loved every minute of it because number one, I had just gone through a nasty divorce. And so I just needed something to keep my mind off of everything. And technically I didn't need to even start up until AIT, but I just asked if I could do the whole thing.
Really?
Because I didn't. Yeah. I didn't have like any soldiering background. The only land navigation I really knew about was being a country boy, and I can look out and be like, yep, I know that ridge and that river runs here, and you follow this down, you're gonna, but military land navigation but it actually made it set me up for success because going through training, they said, hey, you shoot like this. Okay, so I shoot like this. Or this is how you conduct an ambush. Okay, cool. This is an ambush. So everything they told me to do, I didn't have any bad habits or anything, to where I needed to like oh no, I need to learn it this way now. I've been doing it this many years like this, but now I got to do it like this. I didn't have any of that. So if they said do this, okay, cool, do that. Or this is how it's done. Okay, cool, that's how it's done. And so it actually was a huge benefit for me. You know what I mean? So
that's the one cool thing about the Army that I think they actually excel pretty well at is that when they have doctrine and they say, okay, now this is doctrine, it's like it is the same pretty much all the way through, even in special operations, like the basics, at least the basics, like the basics of like how to patrol, the basics of like how to set up a security or how to flank and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's the same no matter where you end up. It's pretty much exactly the same.
Yep. Yeah. Battle drill 1 through whatever. Look in the Ranger handbook. Okay, cool. All right. Here's how you clear a trench. Cool. Stuff like that. So it was, I don't know. It wasn't bad. I mean, it definitely, like physically. Oh yeah. It was, there were times that it was just, just horrible, but, training wise, for me, I just, all right, that's how we do it. So that's pretty much, help set me up for success in my opinion.
So I know you were going through the Q course and everything. Did you decide, or were you? I can't remember. Did you decide, or were you assigned to do 18 Charlie as your path?
So after the aptitude test and everything like that, there was no way in hell a Delta was anywhere in my sights, because my test scores were just that bad. But I wanted to be a Charlie, and they were like, well, there's a lot of math involved in demolition, and you have demolition theory and all this other stuff. But it was so interesting to me that I had a couple of hiccups, but I never had to recycle. I just had to retest a couple times. But yeah, it was it's demolition. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's awesome.
A blast.
Yeah, literally.
I was a master breacher for my platoon and company, so I got to blow up a ton of shit, and that's the one thing that I think
that's awesome.
I miss the most out of anything, for the most part. Like as far as the technical side of things, like that's what I miss the most out of anything.
Well, like the wiring and
just all of it. Like always, just because every time, like I, as a master breacher, you would study up on like all different types of IEDs, like how to look for things, like the new TTPs that are out there that the enemy's deploying. You would just review all these different reports and things of what's going on out in the field. And then, so there's that side of it, which I think is really cool to kind of stay in tune with, but then also just knowing the math and the technology between all the different types of demo, like whether you're using C4, you're using, your
thermite.
Data.
You guys use thermite?
No,
not very often.
Really. Thermobarics, yes, to blow up buildings, basically.
Dust initiators kind of stuff.
Yep. But yeah, and then like ECT, stuff like that. I'm still proud to this day. Well, I don't know if it's still in the kind of book, but I created a charge that everybody else started using basically throughout the regiment on one of my deployments. So I was pretty happy about that.
Nice.
But yeah, that was my favorite.
You are an engineer now, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you make it through the Q course. You finally get to your team, and then you go on your first trip to Afghanistan and the Panjwai kind of valley, right? Or is it?
No, we were in Aruzgan, bordering Helmand.
Gotcha.
So we were so that was the 2012 was Panjwai district, Kandahar province, but 2010 was Aruzgan and Helmand.
Gotcha. And so what was that, especially because, being in the Navy, you were on a ship, but this was, I guess, your first time really kind of boots on the ground, right? On a deployment.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. You know, in the Air Force, I went to Iraq and whatnot, and I mean, besides IDF, there was nothing crazy, you know, on my deployment. But yeah, this was my first time actually. You know, I'm now I got a real gun, and I got an idea of how to use it, and I'm on the ground, and there's the base back there, and we're outside of the base driving into, you know, whatever. And that was my first experience. Is like, holy cow, I'm actually like not just sitting on a base watching people roll out anymore. We're the ones rolling out. And so yeah, that was it was for me, it was just it was awesome because I felt like I had finally come kind of full circle. But then when, you know, when the coolness goes away and reality kicks in, and you're living in a mud hut, and you know you're you're showering maybe well, not showering, you're scrubbing off in the Helmand River maybe once a week, not knowing that they dump sewage in it just up the stream. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I really wish like Jim and Chow Hall, and man, that would maybe that life on the base wasn't that bad, you know. But it was just awesome because these dragons that I'd been chasing, you know, it's like, man, I need to go out and do my part. I want to get in the fight. I want to do this. I mean, my third day in country, we got in, you know, a 12-hour long tick, and it was just like, wow, this is great. And I'm really shooting a gun at things. I don't know if I don't know exactly if I'm hitting anything or not, because what people don't realize is the Taliban, it's not like movies. You're not, you know, you see muzzle flashes and you engage the muzzle flashes. You don't see, well, very rarely do you see the full silhouette of a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not stupid. And so, but yeah, it was just an adrenaline rush, and 7.62 cracking, RPGs going off and stuff like that. And it's like, holy cow, this is awesome. And then I got addicted and started chasing that combat high. And it's a dangerous chase, but I, you know, did it for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Was that first mission what you refer to in your book as the Alamo?
So we were at the Alamo. That's
Okay.
where we were living at. And we kind of had we kind of set up a very long, you could call it an LPOP if you want, but it was just a recon position so we could watch the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was gearing up for this major valley clearance we were going to do. Probably, you know, so we were up there, and I would say about 4 months, but we were just gearing everything up for this major valley clearance, because in the Chuchi Valley, there was, you know, reports of 2,500 to 3,000 fighters. They're using this exact route to conduct attacks in, you know, Kandahar and whatnot like that. And so, and with being up there, pulling, you know, surveillance on that river area right there along the Helmand, yeah, we were in fights daily, multiple times per day, and just whatnot. So it was definitely a hornet's nest we were in, but it was, I mean, it was everything I wanted. That's why I joined the Army and went through, you know, the Q course and whatnot, is because I wanted to be in that exact position that I was in, regardless of how bad it sucked, because it was hot and dirty.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I know during that time it was a really rough area to be in, to be fighting in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know on one of your foot patrols out of the Alamo, you chose to write a death letter. What kind of brought that forward? Like, why did you want to write something like that?
So I actually wrote that before the valley clearance. So
Okay.
we weren't on a foot patrol. We were actually moving to our last covered and concealed before kickoff. And we had a couple hours, you know, just kind of sat, you know, just sitting back and waiting for green light. And so, and this was a huge clearance mission, and, you know, hundreds of commandos were coming in from the center. We had ODAs coming from the north down. We were coming from the south up, and it was just this huge mission. And the Taliban, through ICOM chatter, they knew we were coming. Everyone knew. There was no secret. And so, yeah, I was just like, well, maybe I should do this. I don't know if you're like, I don't know. I think I more wrote the death letter just because I've seen it on movies, and I was like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do because this is what people do in movies.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did it. I have no idea. But I did. and I kept it on me, and little did I know, about 6 hours later, I'd almost that death letter would almost get delivered. So
it's,
crazy.
I wrote one. It took me 4 deployments before I wrote my first one. But I don't know what it is, but I know a lot of people do. And obviously there's different motivations for things, whether it's you saw it in the movies or you just get to this point where you're like, I think this might become a reality at some point, and maybe I should put some words down just in case this happens. And that's kind of what it was for me. And it's a very dark thing. And when you're writing it too, especially, I don't know if you had the same experience as me, but like you get this wave of emotions almost where you're thinking about that what if, you know what I mean? So you're trying to cover all your bases of like telling certain people certain things, or just making sure that they're not worried about you or not like grieving too long. You want them to move on, whatever it is. Like people put different things down, but just that experience of, I don't know, realizing why you're writing it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Same thing with me too. I think deep down inside, I was writing it because we had some close calls, like walking around the corner, 12-foot mud hut wall, and you're making that corner, and a 7.62 round, in 2 inches from your face hits the mud hut wall, and you got, it's like, holy cow. And so it was kind of one of those things that it was like, okay, I know if I was able to put a laser tracking device on every single round that's been fired at me, I would probably shit my pants with how lucky I am.
Jeez.
Yep.
And that's pretty much, I think, the reasoning behind it. You said it very well, is just there's been so many close calls that it's like, all right, let me put something on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like you just said, you almost had to write that reality of yours. I know on that patrol that you were blown up by an IED. Can you tell us more about how that transpired?
Yeah. So the Valley clearance was, we kicked off September 11th, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And
perfect
we
day.
had moved up. Yeah. Yeah. And we had moved up to, our last known friendly location, because we'd done a few leave behinds as we had probed throughout the months. We'd do some leave behinds and leave, Afghans, and they would set up their own little security posts there. And it's like, okay, past this, it's all bad guys. And so I wrote that death letter September 11th, and then we're waiting for the green light. So now all of a sudden it's September 12th, like 02 in the morning, maybe something like that. And we like, green light, all right, everything's initiated. We have gunships on station, A-10s are loitering, everything's ready to go. Like, all right, good. So kickoff. And my ODA, we were broke up into different clearance teams amongst the ODA for this southern village that we were going to clear. And hopefully that day we would be able to make it to the central location and meet up with the commandos. Well, as the 18 Charlie, supposedly a guy that should know how to find IEDs, which I think I'm pretty good at it, both the easy way and the hard way. But we had one group that was going to be clearing the trench system. They had like this World War I style trench along the Helmand River that we would just constantly drop so many bombs on it, and they would just come out like cockroaches and rounds start flying again. Like, how? And then there was another group that was going to clear through an orchard. And then my group, we had the first sets of compounds. And you don't want to be, so the backdrop of this village, you have the Helmand River on one side, you have IED unknown in front of it, and on the other side is a ridgeline. And you don't want to be out in the open when day breaks, because now you're silhouetted, and it's warfare 101. You just don't want to be on the low ground while someone with a machine gun is on the high ground and you're out in the open. So my job was to clear the first set of compounds, and then we could get up our C2 node and start, now once daybreak hits, okay, now we're not out in the open anymore. We have cover, and we can, set up security, and guys can get some shut eye or whatnot. You know how it goes, fire-based activities. So our patrol-based activities. So first set of compounds, I had this plan that we had rehearsed, because you rehearse every mission. And the plan was, we're going to get up to the first compound, and the Afghans are going to lead the way, because we had militia force at that time, and so they were all from the area. It's like, all right, so the Afghans are going to lead the way because we're doing village stability operations, and we want these guys to fight for their own country. Yeah, sounds great. This is a good idea, America. We're so good at this. And we get up to the first set of compounds, and it's like, all right, go ahead, let's clear this compound. And Americans aren't supposed to be leading the way at this point in the war. It's Afghan led. So I look, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing great Green Beret stuff. I just pointed at a door and told them to go. It's great. And they won't move. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not such a great Green Beret after all, because they're not moving. So I talked to our Terp. I said, hey, what's the deal, man? Like, we need to go. And he said, they're scared. They said it's too dangerous. It's like, well, I know it's too dangerous. That's why we're here. Like, because this is a really scary, dangerous place. Okay, got it. So, cool. Tell them to go. And they said, no. Like, huh. He said, Americans should go first because you guys are better fighters and better armed and blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's great. If we were in Texas, I would agree with you. But we're in Helmand province, Afghanistan. Or I'm sorry, Uruzgan province, Afghanistan. So you should probably go first. Kind of your country kind of thing, Nope. All right. So I turned around to tell, my counterpart, it's like, hey, man, these guys aren't moving. I'm new. I don't know. Like, what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, go get Nick away from that door right now. I was like, what are you talking about? He's right. Well, our Terp had wandered all the way down to the first compound, the breach point or entryway. And it's still dark out, and we're still doing noise and light discipline, but he's trying to like wave guys down there. He's this Afghan Rambo. And it's like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so I'd moved down to where he was at, and I, followed the best track that I thought was his, because again, it hadn't been cleared. And I've definitely had a lot of hindsight 2020s, like, well, maybe the next time, if I went back in time, I would probably clear up to him like you're trained to do. But nope, outran my headlights and took off and got down to the breach point. And I grabbed him. I was like, what are you doing, dude? This is wrong move. And he goes, no, we need to clear this. We'll get him in there. And I was like, nope, pull back, head back to Lance. And so my idea was, when I pulled him away from the breach, I don't want to be standing there with my sides exposed or my back to it, because we don't know what's on the inside of that. So I turn around and I get my gun, not inside the doorway, because I don't want someone reaching by and grabbing it, but I'm pulling security on the doorway while Nick moves back to Lance. And I see out of the corner of my eye, I see something move, and I, bloodthirsty, I wanted to shoot somebody. And so I stepped inside the breach just a little bit to see what was in the corner, and boom. And Jeez. So, yeah, it stepped on an IED right in the right in the doorway or the breachway or the entry point or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Damn,
man,
pretty good tactic.
Yeah. Well, that's a hindsight. Yeah,
you did find it.
Yeah.
Hindsight, looking back, obviously you're still here, And you learned a very valuable lesson, I think, probably.
Curiosity killed the cat.
But man, that's so crazy. You know, I was there in Afghanistan almost the same time. I think I was there a little bit before you in 2010. And we were running into the exact same problem where, you know, Afghans are supposed to be taking over. They're supposed to be taking lead. But anytime something got dangerous or hectic or we were in a tick, they're just like, nope, you guys are up. And then we say, okay.
And it's crazy too, because I've met some Afghans that are warriors.
Yeah.
It is insane. I'm like, okay, now I can see the warrior spirit that everybody talks about. But then I've also met some Afghans that literally a couple harassing fire or probing fire, and they throw their guns down and they run. And I was like, they're not even shooting at us.
Yeah.
They don't even know where they're at. It's called fire by recon or recon by fire. You know, it's like,
are these the ones that can do jumping jacks?
There's some of those, but usually not to. Well, I guess you were training a lot of militias, so maybe there was, I guess, because they're completely untrained.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was all during the height of VSO.
Yeah.
You know, one tribe at a time and all that stuff. You know.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not talking down on it either. Extremely effective.
Yeah.
VSO was very effective.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Well, you know, obviously you stepped on IED, and you talk about how you've faded in and out multiple times. You got slapped awake, I believe, by one of your team sergeants or somebody on your team.
Yeah, our 18 Bravo.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And so I don't want to get too much into it because I think people should read this book 100%. Like I want them to read this book. But one thing that I took out of your entire experience of, you know, the being blown up, thinking that you're going to die, thinking you're going to lose your leg multiple times is your attitude kind of throughout the entire process, and how you continue to bring a lot of humor into really shitty situations. And I think specifically at like when you were recovering at what is it, VAMC down in Texas.
Oh, Brooks Army Medical Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were interacting with the nurses, and you were just deciding that you were going to be naked all the time. And then another time where you were traveling and talking to kids about how you got bitten by a shark. Like where does the, I guess the humor, especially when something so traumatic is happening to you, that you constantly like pull that out to the surface?
I probably use humor more as an scapegoat because it's really hard to not like somebody if they're making you laugh. But chances are I don't know what I'm doing if I'm going to jokes or something like that, because I'm just trying to like, all right, let's get all the attention off the fact that I have no clue what I'm doing, and let's make some people laugh. But I think for me, it's just going through some of the stuff I've gone through in life and some of the trials that I've had. I mean, if I've definitely been a victim of the poor me entitlement and why me and all this other crap. But I've also noticed that some of these situations, when they're done, they're just super funny. It's like, wow, that was so dumb. That's kind of funny. And where other people are like, that's not funny at all. Like, you are a sick sense of humor kind of guy. And I'm like, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, no, it's not funny at all.
You should have been a combat medic.
Yeah, your leg has got pus and you got rods going in your bones, and it just looks like this creature off of a Saw movie, and you're convincing these kids that you're a shark attack survivor, and how can I make this up? Look at my leg. And they're like, wow, apparently you can't make that up because look at his leg. Yeah, 100%. But just stuff like that. I've told people, I've had people that they'll ask me about it, and I'll tell them about being a travel guide in Canada, and we had I was showing people around whatever area, name it, and grizzly bear came out, and I saved all the tourists. And that, I mean, I can't make it up. Look at my leg. They're like, oh man, he must be telling the truth. Look at his leg. I'm like, yeah, you know, just stuff like that. Because the truth is not really that cool. It's like, yeah, I took a wrong step, being an idiot, and boom. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's not funny. But like roundhouse kicking a grizzly bear is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Or swimming out to save 2 kids from a bull shark and then, you know, getting your leg bit, is that, I mean, it's kind of funny in my opinion. Or if I just don't want to talk to people about it, like, you mind if I ask what happened to your leg, instead of saying, you know, yeah, I do mind. I just don't step or don't try and push branches in through a wood chipper with your foot. Stupid.
Shit.
And they're like, yeah, they're like, really? Look at my leg. I can't make that up. Wow.
I feel like there's a different story with each group of people. There's probably hundreds of stories out there of how you almost lost your leg.
There is.
There's got to be a burning building rescuing a baby somewhere in there.
You gotta write a short novella of all of the stories that you've told about how you've injured your leg.
So I actually thought about that. I thought about naming the book "The Shark Attack That Never Happened" or something like that, or you know, because yeah, I've used them all, and people can't tell me it didn't happen because I have the scars.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, how are you gonna tell me this didn't happen? Look at my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's gonna think, oh no, that's typical IED blast injury, is it? I don't think so.
Well, obviously, you spent a lot of time in rehab, and you still continue to go on and fight again after that. What do you think it is inside you that continues to make you want to keep driving and keep wanting to go forward even after the life-threatening injury like that?
So there's a couple things, and one of them is the God's honest truth, and it's that I'm a dumbass. I love adrenaline, and I like the rush of combat, and I was not going to let the Taliban beat me. You didn't win, because when I got blown up, you could hear them on ICOM chatter celebrating. They played that stupid jingle music where they're like, oh, and then threw out these numbers. We killed 500 of them, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of people. We have 12 here, but you know, stuff like that. But it really bothered me that they were celebrating my pain. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, don't worry. Like, I'll be back. Mm-hmm. I promise you I'll be back. So, but there was something even more, you know, kind of behind the scenes and through advice from my dad and stuff like that. You know, there was a couple things, and one of them was I didn't want to get to be an old man and look back and wish I would have at least tried, or wish I would have. And the worst thing that would have happened is they would have said, no, you're not medically cleared to deploy. Sorry. And then at least I tried. Yeah. You know, but if I never would have tried, if I just assumed like, oh yeah, look at this leg, there's no way, then I would always have that, man, I wonder, or I wish I would have. And I wish I would have, they're bad for an older man, because when you get to a certain point when you can't go back and undo those I wish I would have, then it's kind of a mental prison in a way. And my dad had told me about that. But then one of the biggest things that I've always carried with me throughout my life is regardless of the situation you're in, or how bad it hurts, or how dark it seems, or you know, how impossible that moment is, one thing that won't ever stop is time will keep ticking. And regardless of how bad your injury is or situation is, you'll recover and you'll move on. But the one thing that people forget, and I didn't even know this until, you know, my dad really, you know, had to force this into me. But one thing that people don't look at is how you handle that situation at that point in time, right there. Ryan Hendrickson in San Antonio, Brooks Army Medical Center, and I'm, you know, becoming a victim of my injuries and poor me and I'm entitled, why, and all this other shit that just, it plagues you. But how you handle that situation right there, because time keeps ticking on, you're going to get to a point in your life when you're older, probably, and you're going to look back and you're going to have two choices. Are you going to look back and be ashamed of how you handled that situation? Or are you going to look back and be proud of how you handled that situation? And you knew that you gave it everything you could. There was nothing, you know what? Hey, so I just can't, I gave it everything I can. I'm not medically qualified, or cleared to go back. Okay, I'm going to move on with my life. But you tried and you own that situation. Or what happened with me was got cleared and went back.
Yeah.
But that was a really big thing for me, was time keeps ticking. You can't stop that. But what is going to happen is you're going to look back and how you handled that situation. You're either going to be ashamed of it, which as an older man, again, that's like, shame's the bad thing. It's painful. Or you're going to be proud of how you handled that situation. And so I think that was, kind of one of the biggest driving forces behind me just kind of nugging on and is because I didn't want, I wish I would have, and I wanted to make sure that when I got to a certain age, I would look back and be like, you know what, regardless of how the cards fell, I did it right.
Yeah.
So.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. And you make sure to make this a really big point in the book. And I think we would be remiss without mentioning it too. You know, the humor got you through it, but also the people that surrounded you got you through and like kept pushing you and motivating you. And I've been to VAMC. I actually had a short stint there where I met up with a fellow Ranger who got blown up in an IED as well. Lost both of his legs, and but that facility and the people that work there are truly like angels. Like truthfully, they are some of the greatest people on this earth, and it's incredible to see like the attitude that they bring every single day into that facility, no matter how dark and hard it is for the people who are recovering there. Because that is where you go, where it's like, people have lost limbs. They are crazy burn victims, like dealing with, single, double, triple, quadruple amputees. Like it's really difficult walking into that and seeing it. But after spending a significant amount of time there, I'm very grateful for the people who continue to work out of that facility.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I mean, the second chance that they get, that those, professionals working in that area, whether it's, from the nurse to the physical therapist to the orthopedic surgeons or whoever, they gave so many of us second chances. You got a second chance at life. You got the magic redo button because of them. And so I agree with you completely. Like they're miracle workers. They're angels. And every time, this soldier, sailor, airman, Marine would come in and they're all banged up and their life is completely changed forever, shattered because of war. They put in all that emotion and that work to try and make this person, a man or a woman again, or a soldier again, whatever it is. But trying to give them their life back. And then the next plane load of, wounded guys come in and recock right again. And then next plane load, recock. So, I mean, there's like just miracle workers.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
Well, I know you rehabbed and you finally, I can't remember the exact program, so you have to mention it again, but you worked in a program to get rehabilitated to finally get back out on the line and be able to deploy again. And you talk about, especially your experience of reintegrating with your team and kind of the disgruntled nature some of your folks on your team had towards you about coming back and being worried that, you're going to be a liability and everything. But the crazy part to me was where you ended up. Panjwai area outside of Kandahar, I know is horrible, especially for IEDs.
Super bad. Super bad.
Yeah, it's actually where one of my really good friends passed in October 2011. So like just before you were there.
Yeah.
And it's a place that I think at the time the Battle Space Center was 10th Mountain or something like that. And there's a specific area that's, I think like when I was reading it or listening to it in the book, I was like, that sounds exactly like the areas we were patrolling over and over again. But 10th Mountain would control it, and they would call it IED Alley. And they were like, you don't go through here. Like nobody goes through here because we've had too many casualties in this space. Mm-hmm. But that's where you ended up.
I mean, getting cleared to go back was, I thought like I did it. This is amazing, and I'm gonna get this ticker tape parade because of everything I've overcome. Like everyone cares about what Ryan Hendrickson overcome, right? Oh yeah, obviously. Well, that's not the case. And so yeah, I do. I get back to Afghanistan like I think 18 months after I got blown up. And we were losing guys in the Panjwai pretty often. Mm-hmm. And so in the regular Army unit that we were there with, we were doing ramp ceremonies way too much. Yep. It was heartbreaking. But we I fly in, get into Kandahar, and and our sergeant major comes out and he's like, well, hope you're ready for this because you're going to a little contested area. We call it Panjwai. It's like, oh, okay, well, and do a little research and you see what happened with the Canadians there, and it's like, oh, Panjwai is real bad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I get up, I fly out, all my stuff's on a helicopter, fly into base, and there's no ticker tape parade. Like, huh. And there's a couple guys, the head nod, what's up, man? Something like that. It's like, were guys not tracking I'm coming? Oh, they were. And they didn't want me on the team because it's Panjwai. And they're bringing out this guy that they had seen me just 18 months ago, nearly dead. And they're like, what? Like, how is your leg going to handle do you know what a grape row is? Oh, you're about ready to find out. Like, how are you going to handle that? I don't know. So yeah, it wasn't the warm reception that I thought. And I was definitely told like, hey, this isn't a Green Beret Make-A-Wish Foundation kind of thing where you come out and you're a Green Beret for a little bit and like, oh wow, everyone, man, look at this, so great. And then you go about your life. Like, people are dying out here. And if you don't hold up your end, you're going to get somebody killed. And we don't agree with you being out here, but we don't have a choice because Sergeant Major said you're coming out here. So yeah, you better hold up your end of the bargain, dude. And so it did. It took quite a while to kind of, to get those guys to be like, all right, no, we're fine. We're fine. But yeah, just coming in, I was like, I made a terrible mistake coming back. I don't belong here. Man. And because it wasn't what I thought. I thought everyone would be so happy and whatnot. But in the end, when I look back, I completely agree with him. 100%. I completely agree with the mindset. It's not a Make-A-Wish Foundation for Green Berets. Like, people are dying here. And if you can't hold up your end, you could get someone killed. And so, yeah. So, no, I understood it completely. It's not fun to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, it like struck me as very ironic about where you ended up being, because that was like the IED hotbed 18 months after you got blown up by an IED.
Yeah, it was the most heavily IED'd area in Afghanistan, especially after the Bellenby massacre happened, which happened when we were there. The villager was just like, okay, then Taliban are safer for us than you guys are, because look at what you just did. So Taliban, they have freedom of movement here, and lots of people got hurt or killed because of that situation. Yeah,
that massacre was when I can't remember his name, but when he walked outside of the fob, and then
Bales.
Yeah, and then he went out and killed 17, I believe, right? Or how many?
I thought it was like 18 or 19. Yeah. But yeah, he had he went out once, shot up everything, did what he did, came back rearmed, went back out again. And yeah, it was a weird situation. And I don't know, we had to get ourselves away from the Afghans quick.
Yeah.
Basically lock ourselves down. They don't know what's going on quite yet. It was a very weird situation. But and so yeah, because we were probably 5K from Bellenby. Where I was at was Talican, and Bellenby was just up the road from us. And so, but yeah, it was a bad, very bad situation that happened, that night. So.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, you got injured, but I guess more of like an infection.
Yeah.
Later on that deployment, is that right? And then.
Yeah. We had gotten in a tick in a village, and I did what we're all trained to do in basic training. Was I found cover, and I jumped to the cover and started putting rounds down range, because that's what you do. Well, especially, in Afghanistan, you go to the cover that you've already cleared for IEDs. You don't run ahead in an uncleared area, because Taliban love to do that. Put toe poppers everywhere, shoot at you, harassing fire to get you to move to this wall, and then it's lined with toe poppers and whatnot. But yeah, this little ditch I jumped into, we're duking it out with these dudes, and air comes on station, and everyone disappears, and no, I'm just a villager. It's like, yeah, sure you are. But as we're waiting, as we're kind of waiting for, to get a situation, sit rep and all this other stuff, I'm like, man, something really stinks here. And, I start to look around, and I jumped in a shit trench where they were putting all the shit from the compounds and whatnot like that. Well, back up a little bit. We had been on our feet for, over 24 hours. And so I had hot spots rubbed into my skin grafts. So the bottom of my foot's a skin graft, and I had a bunch of cherries on that, which is just open skin. It's just open wounds. And then all up and down the side of my leg is all skin graft. And there was, areas that were rubbed raw, and it's bleeding and stuff like that. And now it's covered in human feces. And I was like, this is probably bad. So we got back from the mission, and I told our medic what happened, and they're like, yeah, you got to go to CAF, dude. This is Infection Alley right here. So they get me up to CAF, and they want to monitor me there. And then we had a couple months left of the deployment. And so, it's just, they're like, we're not sending you back out to the Panjwai. Like you're going to stay up here and pretty much help load helicopters with resupplies and whatnot like that, and then do your part that way. But your war in the Panjwai is over, and so it sucked. Like I really didn't want that to happen, because it just seemed like another setback. But yeah, just for health concerns and making sure that I could get checked daily for infections and stuff like that, because I didn't want to get medevaced out to the States. I wanted to do the whole deployment with the company and everything. And so, like, all right, well, you're gonna stay on CAF. And so yeah, I just got myself extremely busy, and I instead of kind of feeling sorry for myself over the situation that happened, which, would have been my go-to before, I just decided, like, well, if I'm here, then I'm going to get teams everything they need. And every resupply bird that went out, I'm going to have it, packed full of stuff for the guys out there and stuff like that. And so that's what I did, just trying not to, fall into that victim mindset of poor me. Why did this happen to me? Blah, 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 blah. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the old shit trench story happened.
But you finally do find yourself back and an opportunity, right, to get into the fight one more time and at least prove yourself. And I think you even say in the book, it was, if it weren't for that one mission, you probably wouldn't have been a Green Beret as long as you have been.
Yeah. So Hilltop 2000, and they call it Hilltop 2000 because it's 2,000 feet in elevation gain and about a click, maybe a little over a click. So it's straight up and down.
Jeez.
And and so there was going to be this last huge mission, for the battalion, and they're clearing this area called the belly button, and all this other stuff. Well, the command element was going to infill in 24 hours prior to the clearance op, and basically conduct overwatch activities on this hilltop that went 2,000 feet in elevation gain. and so they just, so the command was going up there, and my buddy was on that mission, and I was like, I need to get on this mission somehow. No, your leg, you can't, blah, blah. No, I was like, I have to get on. How do I get on this mission? Well, the first sergeant, Matt, he comes up to me with a Chea mine detector, and he goes, "Hey man, can you give me a quick rundown on this? I guess I'm clearing the route." And I was like, have you ever found an IED with a mine detector? He goes, no. Like, okay. Have you used a mine detector? No. It's like, okay. Why are you clearing the route? Well, we don't have anybody to do it. I was like, I'm an 18 Charlie. Well, what are you doing? I was like, going with you. Oh, you are? Yeah. You didn't know I was going with you guys. And so it slowly, that took hold until, that sergeant major, again, my buddy, real good friend of mine, he's like, look, dude, we're going to take you, but this is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done, man. And I was like, perfect. I got the battalion commander. I got the battalion command sergeant major. I've got 2 first sergeants. And, because that last mission, everyone wants to get out and get on the ground and stuff like that. So we have all this, all these people here that are all decision makers on what happens with your career. And I was like, perfect. And so, I just knew that I had to be a beast, regardless of how much pain it was or whatnot. I had to beast that Hilltop 2000, and guys started falling out, and we would cross-load their equipment, and I'd be the first one trying to grab a radio or this, and just to make sure these guys knew, like, I'm not a liability. I can still be a Green Beret. I'm still an asset, and and so at the end of that mission, we got back, and nothing was really ever said. And I was like, huh. Hopefully I made a good impression or something like that. And then the next deployment that came up, there's just no questions asked. They're like, no, Hendrickson's deploying. And that's it pretty much saved my career right there. That's as crazy. A Green Beret was that one just horrible gut check.
Yeah.
Super horrible gut check.
I mean, it's good. It's good for you too, to realize, like, that was the one that needed to be, and it's not from a perspective of spotlighting, but it's from the perspective of, like, needing to prove, especially to them, because ultimately it would have been their call, whether or not you were going to be fit for duty to be able to deploy again, to, whether you would have the fitness and everything. And I remember reading or listening to that chapter, and, like, it was a grueling up and down. You talked about having to cross-load. Was it two different people's packs? Yeah. One guy, God bless his heart, leave me here. It's like, that's really good for movies, but this is combat, stupid. Go on without me. It doesn't work that way, stud. Like, you're going. But yeah, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was just, it had to be done. And I do like to think, I took that opportunity to spotlight 100%, but the first word I just said in there was opportunity. And I believe, God will put opportunities in front of you. And if you can take it, it's up to you to take them or leave them. Yeah. Well, not like that. And so, and that just happened to be an opportunity that probably, well, number one, I got the spotlight off me and my leg, and number two, there was 0 questions asked by the command when it came to deployments. It was like, no, Ryan's good.
because everything said non-deployable. Big Army had me non-deployable. 7th Group always had to waive that, you know? And so that was the thing, is like every deployment, here's this list of non-deployable guys. And it's like Ryan Hendrickson. And they're like, no, he's waived, he's going, you know, stuff like that.
That's cool. I want to kind of segue a little bit, because you talk about in chapter 2 how your father never really talked a lot about his stories of being in. Did that change after you enlisted or after you wrote Tip of the Spear?
No, it more changed after I got blown up, but but it was, I mean, he still hasn't really disclosed a lot of it, but yeah, a lot of that changed after I got blown up. You know, he'd opened up a lot more, you know, about some of his experiences in Vietnam and whatnot like that through, you know, 2 tours of duty there. So, but
do you think that's, because we get this a lot now, especially now that we've written the book, The 20 War, and it's like, because when they came back from Vietnam, there was not a welcoming like committee, that nobody cared. People were spitting in their faces, like kicking dirt on them.
Yeah,
there just wasn't this like welcoming atmosphere. And honestly, we wrote the book, The 20-Year War, on purpose, telling stories of veterans, because I didn't want that to happen again. And it wasn't from the sense that I was afraid that people were going to like spit in the face of veterans and things like that, but I was afraid people were going to forget everything that has unfolded over the last 20 years. The last couple of weeks have been a good reminder for people, but outside of that, it's easy to forget. And I've found from a lot of the people that we've interviewed that being able to tell their story and open up has really been therapeutic for them. So that's why, I wrote this question down, because I was wondering if your dad ever got to that point to where, you know, he's kind of opened up and shared his story to kind of get past that, you know, especially that wave of Vietnam vets that came back and how they felt about their service.
So he has opened up a bit and shared, but he always, I mean, he would always make comments like, you know, I haven't, like, what I did in Vietnam isn't anything close to what you guys do in Afghanistan and whatnot. So he automatically undercuts, you know, his time and service there. But he, a lot of healing came in when I was at Brooks Army Medical Center in the hospital, because he was my care provider there. And a lot of healing came in for him there, because he couldn't believe what people were doing for his son and for the troops. And so he actually was able to put a lot of Vietnam behind him, just through my treatment at BAMC and how he saw me treated and taken care of and stuff like that. So
that's good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that,
And I think that kind of goes with, you know, your father's healing a little bit in that regard. And I'm curious to kind of go into your healing from you writing The Tip of the Spear. Has that been cathartic for you?
It has. It's definitely opened up some, you know, I know throughout the writing process and whatnot like that, and how vulnerable I make myself in the book. It's definitely brought some things to light that I'm not, proud of or something like that. But I believe that the story had to be told, and people had to see, the rawness of this normal human being, me, and the situations that I've been in, and my self-induced pitfalls from, that I would constantly, have to dig myself out of, or climb out of these pits that I've purposely jumped into just from being a dumbass or the mindset or whatnot. But the victimization and the entitlement mindset, which I battled a lot. And there's always a part of me that still battles, this entitlement portion of like, you figure, you have no idea what I've done. Like, who are you to talk or do this or be like, or like, do you know what I've done? Well, no, they haven't, number one. And number two, who cares?
Yeah.
You're the only one that cares. You're making yourself this entitled asshole right now because you think these guys should know and care about what you supposedly think you've done, And so and a lot of vets, we have that same thing. It's like, do you know what I've, fill in the blanks. And in the end, it's like, no. And why do you expect people to? And that was a huge problem for me. Was when I actually saved my leg, I had my leg reattached. I actually was upset because people didn't give me the same, like, in my opinion, people didn't give me this. They didn't look at me the same as an amputee, all the way to a point of a kid being like, oh, wow, well, that IED must have not been that bad. You still have your leg, right? And I just lost it. It's like, you have no idea what I went through. And this kid is just like, he doesn't know what to do because here's this entitled asshole Green Beret trying to, like getting very angry with somebody because they're not giving me the respect that I feel that I deserve because of what I think that I went through. And it's and it's a victimization entitlement. But the biggest things that I learned through writing the book was, number one, that, I mean, there's times in my life I've just been a little crybaby. It's like, man, I need to man up. But number two, it's actually opened my eyes to something that I feel like that's plaguing our country right now. And it is this victimization entitlement mindset. And I believe, I never thought that it would ever affect me. But then as I was writing, I was like, well, this is the definition of entitlement. And this is you. And this is a case study of victimization if I've ever seen one. And you're talking about yourself right here, stud.
Yeah.
And I just really, I had to, now all of a sudden it's like, wow, I don't like who I am, And so, yeah, throughout writing the book, I've definitely, and everything's a work in progress because we're human beings. But I definitely have been able to do a lot of self-recovery, which has been huge, letting some things from the past go because it just, I was allowing them, I maintained my victim status to certain things that had happened to me as a child or whatnot like that. And it's like, well, I'm like this because of this, or this happened because of this or whatnot, instead of just taking control. And so, yeah, throughout writing the book, I didn't realize that the book was going to turn into, a life change for me. I knew, obviously writing a book is a change in your life, but I didn't realize as I kept writing and writing and the uglier things got, I was just like, wow, I need to make some changes in my life. And that's what speaks to people is it's because it's not this Ranger, SEAL, Green Beret, pilot, astronaut, and everyone's like, oh, well, of course he did that. He's a Green Beret. Duh. It's not that. It's like, wow, this Green Beret is a human being.
Yeah.
Like I have that. And the book speaks to him because it's raw.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, I've been a little bitch before, and I'm not proud of it.
I think there's a lot.
I've done this.
I think there's a lot of humility with all that. And I know there's one part that Dan wants to talk about in particular that really stunned you when you first read it.
Well, and I'm glad we went in this order because specifically with exactly what you just ended with is like, it's very easy to put a qualifier on somebody, to say, oh, they were a Green Beret. Of course they did that. Oh, they, what you did in one of the last chapters in the book and that you got a Silver Star for, like, oh, he's a Silver Star recipient. Like, it's really easy to put qualifiers and be like, of course he did that. But I'm glad we talked about that first, because I think that's incredibly important. I'm glad you have that mindset, because it's really easy to get lost in just all of it, right? Like I even struggle having a hard time. Like, yeah, we wrote this book, The 20-Year War. One, I don't like advertising for myself. I don't like telling people like, oh yeah, I'm a co-author of a book. I don't like telling people really that I'm an Army Ranger majority of the time, because it's a qualifier. Like, people love to see that. And sure, I get it.
Yeah, of course you got a Silver Star. You're a Green Beret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I do want to talk about that a little bit, because I think it's incredible. And especially with what we were leading with previously is, I think a lot of things happen in your life on purpose, and to get on that last mission and to be looked at as somebody who is going to be deployable, there wasn't going to be a question, obviously put you in the position where you were in 2016 and put you in the position to be able to ultimately save, many lives, and why you got, the citation, of why you were awarded the Silver Star. And it's easy for a lot of people that I've even talked to that I know have were awarded Silver Stars or even Medals of Honor and things like that. And they always talk about like, yeah, but I was just doing my job. And that's absolutely right. But at the same time, sometimes your job puts you in an extreme situation that most people maybe wouldn't react the way that you did. And so I don't know if you want to talk about that event a little bit, but I do think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, the 2016 trip, so there's two things that happened there. Number one, for a lot of that mission, I was just doing my job. But number two, the reason why I got the Silver Star is not because I was doing my job. It was because I was being a human being, and we were refusing to leave people behind because humans don't do that.
Yep.
That's all it was. It wasn't nothing heroic or nothing like that. It was just like, I'm a human, he's a human, we're going back for him. It doesn't matter. And so those are the two things that, I did my job and I was a human being. But yeah, that mission into Bogland was, it was insane. I mean, we got called up on this, Taliban. We didn't realize we had walked into, the hornet's nest we did. It was, Taliban training camp. They trained suicide bombers, all this other crap, to conduct attacks on Kabul. So we had infilled at night and got to the Afghan NDS base, and we're like, okay, so no one really knows we're here yet. We haven't heard much chatter. We're good to go. Okay, so then a couple days gone by, just let everything calm down again. Like, okay. And then we infilled, when we kicked off the mission, we went in Afghan Humvees and stuff like that. So the Taliban, what we thought was going to happen, and it did a little too good, was the Taliban would think that it was another Afghan patrol, kick the crap out of them, and then rinse and repeat. And so we didn't have RGs or Max Pros or nothing like that. We went in Afghan Humvees and whatnot, man. So when we kicked off, and now we're mounted, now we're going to the dismounted position and we're moving in by foot. Still, there's the Taliban are on. Hey, they're another. I think it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, but you'd hear some chatter. Oh, the Army's out doing this again, but no one had talked about Americans yet. It was like, good, because what we'd hope would happen was the first round that comes by us. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, and there's a JTAC on the ground. Oh, forgot to tell you guys about that. And you just start dropping the arsenal of the United States of America on top of these dudes. So that's why we went kind of under the cover of just an Afghan patrol. So we got up to one of our when I create routes for a mission, I have there's certain choke points, and orchards are one of them. Orchards are very dangerous, super sketchy, and they like to hide caches in them and tunnel entrances and stuff, which means they like to booby trap the crap out of them, and IEDs and whatnot. So we got up to my first choke point, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, all right, we got to clear this orchard, because our first targeted compound is that one right across the orchard. And so it's like, all right, we've already planned this, rehearsed this. And the main element was, so I was in the clearance element, which was myself and 4 Afghans. At that time, they were called the National Mine Reduction Group guys, NMRG. So and one of them's my buddy that I've had, for multiple deployments, Abe. But we're like, okay, got to clear this orchard, and then we'll get ready to take down the first compound, and kind of what I said before, C2 element, and move about and do great things. And so we start moving through the orchard, and Jaweed is right up in front of me. I kind of have guys in this inverted V, to where you have your tripwire guys out here. They're further, command wire guys. they're further in front of everybody, but they're not on the main footpath. And then you have the guys on the footpath, which is myself, Abe, Jawid. Well, we had walked, or we were clearing up, and all of a sudden, you know, and it's dead. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, noise and light discipline, huge. And all of a sudden we heard this. It wasn't big, but because it was so surprising, we heard this like ear deafening pop. It's like, oh shit! Everyone hits the ground. It's like sniper shot. What is that? What just happened? And then Jawid, he's tangled up in all this wire, and he's like, crap, we just hit a tripwire IED, and it didn't go off. It low ordered. The blasting cap was the pop, but it didn't actually detonate the can full of HME and bolts, nuts, nails, and everything else. And it's like, oh God. So okay, pick ourselves up, and I'm like, God, how did we miss that? Well, they're putting them at chest level. It's like, okay, all right, well, hey guys, keep your eyes open. I don't know, whatever you got to say. I don't know, take the best movie quote and throw it out there. Well, we had moved around the trail, we started moving again. Maybe it was about a minute, and all of a sudden I see through my PVS 31s, I see this object dart across the courtyard and into one of the areas of the mud hut. It's like, oh shit. And so, we got we go to guns, and we're not firing yet because they're not firing at us. But it was like, what was that? I don't know. It was quick. And then right after that,
it was a snitch.
Well, right after that, no, it was, yeah, I mean, he was a spotter, but he was running to his gun position. And right after that, this flame from about 20 meters away just shot out from the wall. And the PKM gunner had opened up on us. And then the entire wall, this compound wall, it was just muzzle flashes. And 7.62 is coming in everywhere. And then RPG flies over, boom. And so we're in the dirt. And we had just walked into, a linear ambush. And what was supposed to set the ambush off was the tripwire IED.
Jeez.
And so we're just, I'm in the ground. I'm trying to fire as much as I can. There's rounds coming in everywhere. This RPG gunner, he keeps jumping out and shooting RPGs, but he doesn't quite know where we are either. But one of the Taliban commanders has night vision. And so he's talking about the kill or capture this guy with a flashing helmet. And that's me. I had my IR strobe on. And so they're like, Ryan, they can see your strobe. So I ripped the strobe off, and I threw it as close as I could get to where the PKM was at, because we were cut off from our main element. We were inside of the orchard. Everyone else was waiting to leapfrog. Okay, it's clear. All right, we'll move up to you, and then we'll clear again. Well, they had cut us off from the main element. And so we're just in here, just taking a lead shower, and rounds are kicking up everywhere. It feels like hot bacon grease on your arms and your face and stuff like that, because it's hitting gravel, and you know how it all happens. And so finally I'm firing at I'm on my face, and then I would roll over to my side a little bit, because it's very hard to be in a prone with kit on and all that. So I'd roll over to my side a little bit, and I would engage muzzle flashes, because you can't really see anybody, but you can see the muzzle flashes. And I'm suppressed, so they don't actually know where I'm at, because I had now taken the strobe off my helmet like a good guy. So, but I had my IR laser on, and this RPG guy jumps out again, and he screams, Allah Akbar. And I was like, holy cow, they really do say that. But right when he came up from behind the wall, he lined up perfectly with my laser. I was like, oh, and I just started squeezing rounds, and RPG goes there, and I was like, holy cow, he just walked right in front of my muzzle where my laser was at. And it was impressive. Because you don't stay lased constantly, but when he would come out, I would hit my laser to see if I could get a beat on him. And here's this torso, and he's aiming up for a shot, and my laser's right here. It's like, oh, Oh wow, this is
convenient.
Man, this
That was Akbar helping him out.
Yeah. So we finally air comes on station and they're like, hey, we need to drop here. And they said we can't drop there. That's 17 meters from Ryan's position. It's like, well, if you don't drop, he's dead. You have to drop that bomb. And so the approval that close had to go all the way up to whatever general at Bath. And finally approval came in, but they couldn't drop a fragmentation producing bomb. It had to be a concussion bomb, 500-pound concussion bomb, because troops, I was 17 meters from, where the PKM and whatnot. So aircraft comes in, weapons release, and the JTAC, our combat controller, he's like, hey man, this is going to be big, and he's like, good luck. I was like, good luck. You're not supposed to say that. But I put my face in the dirt, and, I was telling the Afghans with me, I was like, yeah, get your heads down and open up your mouth. I don't know if the overpressure, how it works. I think, again, I saw it on a movie somewhere and was like, yeah, this is what you do. But that bomb hit. And I remember the first thing I was scared of was that these huge chunks of mud hut were going to rain down and like break backs, necks, whatnot like that. But I remember like this blast wave went over the top of me, and you can see the leaves and the sticks and dust everywhere. And you're just sitting there, you're just riding the ride. And then that calms down. It's like, okay, we need to get up and we need to pull back, but you can't stand up because you just had your brain scrambled. So you're falling over and you look like a dead fish or not dead fish, but a flopping fish. And you're just, holy cow, man. So you're trying to finally, we're able to get back far enough, and they come back in and they drop another 500-pounder. And when we were waiting on that second drop, I remember I reached up, and at this point in time, I think it was starting to get light. So it was like 3:30 in the morning, something like that. But I remember reaching up, and I had this liquid coming out of my ear, and it was crusting into my beard. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So yeah, still got a mission to do. So that firefight, it started off this 18-20 hour mission, and that was the beginning of it. So we get into the compound, clear it, checking the bodies, everything like that, and it's like, okay, now how you or the entire village is broken up, and you're like, all right, we're at compound 1, 2, 3. Okay, next compound is going to be 4, 5, 6. All right, moving to compound 4, 5, 6, and you're constantly updating your forward line of troops and all that stuff like that. Well, so I'm still like, my job is in 18 Charlie is to run, my Afghan counter IED guys and to clear the paths for the follow-on forces and whatnot. And throughout like clearance that day, before we got to the LOA, I mean, I'd found 17 IEDs myself.
Jeez.
Our Afghan, my Afghan buddies, they were in the 50s. We ran out of C4. We were having to just spray paint by them and then bypass and move on to other things. But we get to LOA. It's like, all right, good to go. We're going to get, men, weapon, and equipment. And then we're going to go ahead and head back. And we just took this hard fought ground, good. Everything's going good. So we're going to need you guys, Afghans. You're going to have to do what has been talked about in every warfare book known to man. You're going to hold the ground that you just took. No. Well, what do you mean no? You have to. No, we don't. You guys stay here. Well, this isn't our job. We were here to clear. Why wouldn't you hold this village? We don't want to. Like, what's here for us? You just, what? I don't know how to answer this question. So our team sergeant's having this argument with their commander, and I was, getting my guys ready to pull back, and we were going to head back out. And one of the Afghan commandos came up to me, and with a Terp, Terp's name was Dost, and he said, "Hey, there's like 15 to 20 guys moving in this direction. It's like, well, how do you know? And it's like, well, our guy on Overwatch can see them. It's like, okay. Are they farmers, villagers? What are they? We don't know. I was like, okay, cool. So I go up and I was like, hey man, we need to get going. Like, there's people that are starting to move back this way, and we don't need to be around. Like, the Afghans can take it if they're going to, if not, but we need to get out of here, man. And so it's like, all right, yeah, let's start getting guys ready to go, and then we're gonna move back to the vehicles and head back. And so then that commando came up again and he said, hey, those people all disappeared. I was like, well, where do you disappear to? Well, during this clearance operation, we had found multiple tunnels and tunnel entrances and everything like that. It's like, okay, so what do you mean disappeared? So it's like, hey man, we gotta go. Like, wherever they are, they're not there anymore. They were moving this way. We got to go. And it was within a couple seconds after that, this overwhelming fire superiority of bullets and RPGs just went through us. Like, they hit us harder than I've ever. I can't even like describe it from a movie. Rounds were coming. The dirt road was just it looked like thousands of horses running down this road with all the dust getting kicked up everywhere from just rounds pouring in. Jeez. So we do what you're trained to do. You get cover and you return fire. And so we jump into these ditches that are lining the road, and they're 6 foot deep. And there's just rounds going everywhere. And I can look up the road and you can see guys that have been hit and they're in the road. You're probably dead. It's like, okay. But we need to get the upper hand here. Like, what happened? And then the next thing you hear the sound of a mortar, not exploding, but launching. And you're like, uh-oh, that's a Green Beret's worst nightmare, is a mortar system. And then boom, mortar round goes off. They hit, they shoot, or they're far. Next one. Boom. Now they're they shot in front of us. They shot behind us, shot in front of us. Well, every mortarman knows now you're going to split the difference.
Yeah, walking in the target.
You're probably going to get rounds on target. So we're screaming for air support, and they were like, we can't drop because we don't know who's who. It's like, what do you mean you don't know who's who? And then we're engaging guys at 10 meters and whatnot as they're running through, and they're in our lines. And they have us on 3 sides surrounded. And so it's just like, holy cow. And the amount of rounds that are coming down. And then it's like, okay, well, we still, like, we're doing good. We're, let's start to get back to a certain position to where we can gain some distance from these guys and start dropping bombs. And then eagle down, eagle down, eagle down. It's like, oh God, you don't want to hear eagle down. And then it comes over again and again and again. It's like, whoa, what is going on? And so now it's like, we need a CCP. We got to set up the casualty collection point because we have Americans that are down and we don't know the status of them, but we're getting eagles down and stuff like that. So we set up a CCP and we start bringing our Afghans in, and Americans are coming in. We're working on them, and then the CCP gets lit up. There's rounds all over the place, and a couple Afghans get shot in the CCP, and it's just there's this huge there's just again just a lot of 7.62 coming in on us, and we realized that just on the other side of the compound there's a 2-story compound, and they're shooting at us from there. Well, the aircraft is like, roger that, dropped, and finally they dropped that compound, and it's like, all right, good to go. And that was within 80 meters of all of us. So still danger close for a 500-pound or 2,000-pound bomb and whatnot. And so it's like, all right, we need to move because we don't have an HLZ here anyways. So we need to move to another area. We're going to go back the way we came, and we're going to take down this compound right here that has that big field behind it. Okay, good. And that big field behind it is, at least as we know right now, is friendly because we're not taking fire from that area. We're taking fire from 3 sides, not the 4th side. It's like, okay, so we have to go back down, this gauntlet of small arms rounds coming in on us to establish this second CCP. And we start, guys start coming in, onesies and twosies. They'll one guy will sprint down the, an Afghan, you'll see him sprinting down the road and he's bleeding everywhere, and he'll come in. And so now we have a mass casualty situation, and the numbers just start increasing. So now you got 4 Americans that are wounded. You got 12 Afghans that are wounded. Jeez. And you've got KIAs starting, Afghan KIAs that are starting to build up. It's like, okay, we need to start getting aircraft in here. And now we've created enough distance. So now we're dropping bombs. And it's like, all right, now, okay, we turn the tide of the war. Combat controllers, saving troops' lives again. And so we turn the tide of battle. Now we're dropping bombs. And we're still taking rounds and whatnot like that, but we were able to gain the upper hand with fire superiority and whatnot. So we're working on dudes, and now medevacs are starting to come in. Well, and then we're starting to get guys out, and then more wounded guys would come in. It's like, okay, here's more wounded guys. And then, all right, hey, we need to get a head count. We need to, again, like everyone, men, weapon, equipment. We need to do a count of what we got right now and figure out what we're missing, what's still out there. So we get a count. Americans are accounted for. Okay, good. We're missing 4 Afghans. Okay, we got to go out and get them. All right, go back to the old CCP. Yep, here's a body here. Okay, we got him. All right, the ditch over here. Yep, there's a body there. Oh, here comes another guy. He's coming up right now. Okay, there's 5. So there's 3 guys. We're missing 2 dudes. We're missing Abe and a commando. Like, well, who saw Abe last? Well, I'm always with Abe. And I said, the last time, right before, and this has been hours now, but right before the tick started, we were up at that footbridge about 500 to 600 meters back up the dirt road that is stained in blood. It's like, well, we can't go back up there. It's like, we have to. Like, no one gets left behind. That. No one gets left behind. And so we, the JTAC, we got this plan. It's like, all right, we're going to bring in 2 Apaches, and they're going to start a gun run, and we're going to take off running up the road. So literally we're using the Apaches as for bounding Overwatch or whatever you want, you know what I mean? So they're shooting and we're sprinting behind these things, just trying to keep heads down and whatnot. And it's like, all right, this plan could work. Wait, we're going to do what? It's like, all right, yeah, whatever. This, like, we have to get these guys. More fighters are coming in the area. It's like, okay, we need to get moving now. Well, prior to this, we already had a bird that went smoking out of the area because it got shot up so bad. And so we almost had I don't want to call it a Black Hawk Down scenario because that was very intense. I wasn't there, but that was very intense. But we almost lost the helicopter. It's like, all right, so we're gonna have a little bit of time. Oh, and by the way, they're running out of fuel, so we need to get up here, get these bodies, and we need to get out of here if they're even there. We don't even know if the Taliban covered them. We don't know what's happened. So JTAC's like, all right, hey, they're starting their gun run, and what is it, a 30 Mike cannon that they got on it, and just starting that gun run, and we just take off sprinting up the road. And there's still dust crickets popping up here and there from guys that are just doing this number and whatnot, but nothing crazy. And we get up to the bridge, and yeah, I look down in the ditch, and this ditch had water in it, and he was floating face down in the ditch, and it was muddy irrigation water. Jeez. And it was bright red from the amount of blood that he had lost. And then right next to him was the commando. So, okay, we need to get these guys recovered, and we need to get out of here. Like we got guys coming in. The Apaches are saying they're seeing people, and it's just like, all right, we need to get moving. All men are accounted for. Good. Now we can get out of here. And so, getting Abe out of that ditch, that was hard. Like muddy and a bloody body is very hard to grab onto. But getting him out of that ditch, and then getting him on his last helicopter ride after everything he's done, for not only Americans but for Afghanistan, and then getting the commando out and everything. We did it right, because Americans. It's hard to say this because of the situation in Afghanistan right now, but I'm a firm believer Americans don't leave people behind.
Yeah.
And we'll send 100 people out there and lose 99 of them to make sure we can recover that one guy.
Yep.
And we showed it that day. And you didn't have to be an American, but you were our counterpart. You were our partner. And so we did it right that day, and we brought all men home. So whether they were dead or not. So that's so that pretty much, that was the the Boglin mission, and we stumbled into a major Taliban training camp. And unofficially they said we killed over 400 fighters.
Jeez.
Holy shit.
Yeah, we didn't line them all up, but at the end of the mission we had 8 Afghan KIA, 4 American WIA, and we had, I think, 16 Afghan WIA. So we got tore up.
Yeah,
we got tore up.
That's a crazy story.
That's what happened in Boglin.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And it for me, damn. I can literally play it scene by scene almost. I know it's not like it's not, because I wasn't there, but I can at least envision so many different things of, piecing together things that I've seen before. Mm-hmm. I wish that everybody could understand like how intense and chaotic and just all of the things that you don't want to happen sound like it happened all on that mission.
Well, the weird thing is I'm like painting this picture in my head as he's talking about it, and I know it probably doesn't even come close.
Yeah, and that, when you were even talking about just like grabbing a bloody body, they're slippery.
Yeah.
And that just brings back so many things that it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And the smell of that gunshot wounds make that burnt flesh with the blood and everything. Yeah, it's insane. But not a single person hit an IED on that mission.
That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I get it. Like I understand, obviously why you were awarded the Silver Star. And I think it's just, I think it's incredible. And I'm so happy you wrote a book, and it wasn't, just solely around one event, but it was a culmination of what got you to that point. And I think it's so cool. Again, what we were talking about before telling this story, because it's easy to just focus on that one event, but I think it's important for people to understand like the whole person. And it's pretty.
Well, they have to know the whole person, or else, like we were just joking about earlier. Of course he did all that. He's a Ranger, SEAL, Green Beret, Commando. You got to know the whole person, or else that story wouldn't mean. They can't put themselves in normal Ryan Hendrickson shoes that ended up in a really screwed up situation, but didn't do anything heroic. He was a human.
Yeah.
And you refuse to leave people behind. That's not heroic. That's called being a human being.
And I think for people listening, this doesn't even come close to the length of the book. So if you're interested in hearing more about this,
you gotta read the book at least.
Go pick up Tip of the Spear by Ryan Hendrickson, because it's just crazy hearing some of these stories that are taken from there.
I think it's so important with what you keep on saying, and I know you're not trying to say it just outright, but I think we do need to say it, because I've been talking about it a lot. We wrote this book, The 20-Year War. It's the only book out there that's titled The 20-Year War. So of course what happened, weeks ago kind of called us into engaging with the media and just like sharing our feelings and stuff like that of the unraveling that was happening in Afghanistan. And it was exactly that. I can't tell you, like, Bo, slide to the side. I put
Tony.
Tony's book there on purpose during
Mhm.
the interviews, because I wanted people to see that that is not a mantra that we say just because it's some like higher level thinking. You're just thinking about your buddies to your left and to your right. That's all you think about, but it is ingrained in us. It's, you don't
Yeah.
leave anybody behind. Like
That's why it's our podcast.
it's not a gray area. It's black and white. Like that is the one thing that is chiseled in stone, that you it's a failure if you leave somebody behind. Everything else leading up to that is not a failure, but it is a failure if you leave somebody behind. So it's been very difficult, and I don't know how you've been processing like kind of everything that's been going on in Afghanistan, and you know, what your thoughts are on it. But I know for us it's been difficult for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think our thoughts are going to be very, very similar, because it has been very difficult, and I was willing to give my life that day. Again, it's not a heroic thing; it's a cultural thing, because Americans don't leave anyone behind, and that's I mean that's it's ingrained in you. That's not a trait that it's like, oh wow, he really did it right. No, that's something that that we'll send 100 men to their death to rescue one.
Yep. Yeah. Ryan, as we begin to wrap up, I mean, I feel like we could talk for
we could
hours. We could keep this thing going if we wanted to. For people that are listening, obviously, I don't want to take too much more of your night, but I think it's important to hear it from your perspective. What's some advice from the things that you've been through for other veterans that have served during the GWAT era or are continuing to serve during this era that you would recommend?
So there's a couple pieces of advice that I have, because mental health is it's definitely, we haven't seen the impacts that are going to happen because of this fallout in Afghanistan, and in the fact that, I mean, guys have been living year by year for that next deployment to Afghanistan to go out and do whatever. And now it's done. And now it's like, hey, flip the switch and be normal again. You're not a killer anymore. We don't do that. But the one thing, or there's a couple things. And number one is when people are like, well, what was it for? What a waste. I disagree with that completely.
Yeah.
I look at what's going on in Afghanistan right now. You have people's uprising movements. You have women that are refusing to do what they're told. I will not cover up. You will not make me do this. You have, and so the Taliban they've kind of hit a brick wall, because we brought in a little taste of freedom. And with that taste of freedom that we brought into Afghanistan, now all of a sudden people, they don't want, I'm not going back to Taliban rule. That's not, no. I want what we had before. And so I do say, like, Afghanistan wasn't a waste, because they got a taste of freedom, and now it's up to them. And I've served with many of Afghans that they're going to die before they'll fall under the thumb of the Taliban 100%. So veterans a lot of vets need to remember that it wasn't for nothing.
Yeah.
There were some bad policy calls that were made. Got it. But it wasn't a failed mission. It wasn't for nothing. It was, we're going to see here in the near future what exactly it was for. And that's because of, what so many heroes did over there, and given the Afghans the glimpse of what freedom looks like. And I think that's about ready to start a movement in Afghanistan that the Taliban aren't going to be able to handle, number one. But for veterans that maybe things do look a little dark right now, or the questions, there's not enough answers for the questions that they have or anything. I do challenge people to remember that as time marches on, you can't stop time. And slowly but surely, things are going to start to, fade to the background a little bit. And everyone's still going to have their demons and their great memories, and, the horrible ones that they battle with. Got it. But as time marches on, you're still going to have to look back on how you're handling this situation right now. And I just challenge people, don't give yourself the opportunity to look back and be ashamed of how you're handling it. You don't want that demon called shame, at an old age because you didn't handle things or take control or whatnot. And then I think the last one is, and that veterans really need to understand this, is you did serve, and for that, I thank everybody for their service, but do not allow yourself to become entitled.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel that you deserve something just because you wore the uniform in Afghanistan and bad things did happen.
Yeah.
I got it. We all got it. But in the end, you gotta control that entitlement mindset. You can't go around getting mad or angry or having issues because people don't understand. They're not going to understand. You can't make someone understand something if they weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make somebody really care because why? Like, who are you? I got it, man. You served and you did great things for God and country, but you have to control the entitlement mindset. Understand that you volunteered for what we did, and things. Yeah, things. People have seen, some horrible things and whatnot like that, but you have to control that mindset that you're owed something, or people
Mm-hmm.
should understand because of this. You're not owed anything, and people aren't going to understand. It's impossible. And when you actually can fully adopt that, life becomes a lot easier because you have taken away that burden that you're putting on other people,
Mm-hmm.
including wives, kids, family members. You're taking that burden away from them because they're not forced to have to try and understand. So don't burden people. People aren't going to understand, but that's an entitlement mindset when you allow that to control you. And so that's, I think that's, for me, that's really all I got.
Yeah.
As far as advice. But yeah, the entitlement one's a big one.
Well,
I think those are great.
That's such an important one. We kind of talk about that a lot because it's easy to fall in the trap of what a veteran is supposed to be as being a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
like of being that super entitled Captain America, throwing
Mm-hmm.
out the first pitch of every ball game, like people looking for you. Or you could be what you're talking about, where you have the demons of mental health and you see an easy path for you, that you're the broken PTS, vet that always has problems and stuff like that. And people are like, oh yeah, he's just, a vet. Or you're the bro
Mm-hmm.
vet who's just like out there flamboyantly as a veteran and being like, yeah, look at me, I served overseas. It's like, yeah, you did your job. And I think basically you culminated all of those things in what you were talking about. And I think it's really important for veterans, like we were talking about throughout this entire podcast, just be you, be your person,
Mm-hmm.
be like, you don't need to have those qualifiers. You can just learn to be yourself.
Yeah, like I tell everybody, get your own shark bite story. It does. It's it's funny, but it's the truth.
Preferably not the same story, but
yeah.
So.
Well, Ryan, like I said, we could keep this thing going for hours, but I just appreciate that we're all able to come together, hear your story, and hear more glimpses from your book, Tip of the Spear, which people need to go purchase right now.
Yeah. Speaking of which, what are you doing next? Where can people find this book? What's the best thing for people to do to follow if they're interested in any of that?
So next, we're trying to build this house, but it's the times that we're living in right now, it's not that easy. And once we actually have a house to live in, then adoption. So that's the big ticket item coming up is adopting a kid. Cause I've done a lot of things in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But the hardest job in the world is to be a successful father. And I've yet to do that. And so I'm really looking forward to it.
That's awesome.
And but as far as the book, I mean, Amazon's probably the easiest one, to tell you the truth. I mean, they control the world. So Amazon, it's at major bookstores, but I use Instagram quite a bit. And it's just, I'm at a Tip of the Spear RMH, and that's my Instagram, I guess, handle or whatever you call it. I don't know.
We'll link all that in the episode description too, so people can see it.
Yeah, and then I have a website, believe it or not, a big knuckle dragger like me. It's ryanmhendrickson.com. So, but yeah, that's really it. So,
well, that's exciting, and hats off to you for going of the route of adoption. Yeah. It runs in my family. My father was adopted, and I'm totally pro for it because I see a lot of benefits with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Every kid needs a family.
It's a hard process. And every time I turn around, I can't believe some of the expenses or whatnot, but it's just, that's life. And we're going to open up our doors for a child, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Well, look forward to talking some more, and thanks again for sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Thank you guys very much.
Of course. Thank you.